Gaps, glorious gaps. Learning how to identify a break in the enemy line and learning to exploit it is a powerful tactic in Total War. If you look at an enemy front line and only ever see an impenetrable wall, you need to open your eyes, my friend. It's like your best friend at 15 said, any hole's a goal. So, breaching gaps all begins with the depth of your unit, how wide they are, how deep they are, and how you position them. What we all normally do is spread our units out as wide as possible to create the widest line possible. And that's all well and good, but have you ever thought about what the point is of having your formation really thin and long, like so? Well, let me tell you, it can help you execute some powerful flanking maneuvers. Your new Phallus of Doom formation... Phallus of Doom. I'm going to make that a thing, I tell you. Oh dear, this is why I should really script my videos, otherwise I make up childish jokes. Okay, let's try again. Your new Phallus of Doom formation will be able to fit through spaces that your normal widely spread unit would not be able to get through, allowing you new pathways to get around your enemy's army. If there's a gap somewhere in the enemy line, chances are you'll be able to get something through to try and exploit that gap. So, during the heat of battle, two front lines will often clash, and naturally, gaps very often occur. Rarely does a full solid line ever form. So the first step is to be aware of where these gaps are forming, and where you could potentially take advantage of them. So, if we look at this, many people will look at a front line and say, oh, that's a solid line, I can't get through there, I have to go all the way around, there's not enough space for me to get my units through. But oh, think again, my friend, there are two nicely placed gaps here, which we can get plenty through. All we need to do is use our Phallus of Doom formation, and we'll be able to exploit these to our heart's content. I'm going to position my trolls in the phallus shape, and my cavalry over in this one. It's going to be a tight squeeze for the cavalry, as it does come out quite wide anyway. Maybe these savage orcs as well. Line them all up. That's the first step. You don't want to rush it. Get them in the right position to just run straight through. If they're not quite in a straight line, they may get caught fighting some of the units that are in the line, and that'll slow them down or maybe get them caught, which is not what we want. So we've got to try and get this to go as smooth as possible by getting them straight through the gap, ideally without them touching any of the enemy models so that they don't get drawn into a fight accidentally. You may want to issue the move order again or a couple of times just to keep them moving so that they don't get stuck, because if they do, it may ruin your precious plan. And as you can see, these trolls have gone through a breeze, the easiest flank you've ever made. Same with the cavalry, they fit through even though it's a pretty tight space. In come the savage orcs. Going to line up our hammer and anvil now with the cavalry, and that is pretty much the gist of it. Effortless flanking. All you got to do is deploy and line up your Phallus of Doom, and if done correctly, you should glide through no problem. And once you're through the line, you do have options. You could flank like we did, or you could chase after enemy backline, get after missiles, artillery, whatever the hell you want to do. You could pull them back into their wider formation so you get more models up on that front line of the unit. So you've got some options once you've breached that gap. So here's just a couple of examples. Beastmen here against the vampires. Nice gaps all over the place, plenty to take advantage of. I could go through here or through this one straight ahead of me, but at the end of this second one we do have a little prize in that corpse cart, something we can take out, so that's going to be the better gap to go through. Of course, you do have to be aware of enemy units that may interrupt you. They may come and try to fill these holes, they may attack you as you're going through the hole, and things may get spoiled, so it's not always going to work perfectly to plan, but you've got these options. You could then come and flank these units if you want to, or go after the corpse cart. We've got options with our cheeky flanking unit. And going through this gap here is certainly far quicker than going all the way around to flank to get to that same point. So look for those gaps and use your Phallus of Doom formation to sneak through them. One more with the Skaven here against the dwarfs. So a pretty solid looking front line. Doesn't really look like there's any gaps, but there are two pretty big gaps both on the left and right side of the line. I've got a whole lot of rat ogres, so I've put them in the thin formation and I've charged them straight through those gaps, no problem. Back here there's some thunderers that are going to be easily dealt with by my rat ogres, but again we've got options. We may need to do some flanking around the back of some of this infantry to help out the front line. We can take out those missiles though and the artillery there, no problem. So this is a good example of it. We're taking out some of these strong dwarf units by exploiting the gaps in the enemy front line. But of course, do beware, because any gap for you to exploit and get behind your enemy is also a gap for your enemy to exploit to get behind you. So you do have to be careful and remember that these work both ways. And also be sure to check what you're charging into. If you've got some Grail Knight cavalry and you're going to be met by some chosen halberds on the other side of that hole, maybe it's best not to go through that hole right now, or to try and find another gap to go through. Either way, breaching these gaps is certainly way quicker than going all the way around the flanks of an enemy army. So keep your beady eyes peeled, because they are great opportunities for easy flanking. Now for a couple of ways that we can create these gaps if we want to use them. The first way is to leave spaces between your frontline units. This not only makes your front line wider, protects you a bit against magic attacks, but also provides you these gaps as well. So when you clash with the enemy on the front line, gaps will probably naturally appear. It's very rare that there will be no gap in a front line. It's then just a simple case of lining your units up ready to charge through that gap as soon as they reach their Phallus of Doom formation. This can often be a better idea with monstrous infantry or cavalry, as they're a little bit harder to stop if an infantry should come and try to fill that hole. An infantry will probably get stopped by another infantry. So monstrous infantry is often a good go-to with this, I find. But to be honest, very often gaps appear and you just take advantage of it with whoever you've got nearby. Now, if you want something a little bit more advanced and you have a solid front line that you're going to come up against with your own solid front line and it looks like gaps aren't going to appear, this is what we can do. You're basically going to run away a little bit with one of your units. So very often, if you're playing in multiplayer, people will click attack orders at whatever's in front of them, and the AI will sometimes do the same. Now with a person especially, this is easy to take advantage of because people will click attack orders and then not look at that unit anymore, and they'll worry about the rest of their army. So when they've gone off to look at the rest of their army, we can pull one of our units back to say about here, and then that unit that has the attack order will follow it. This will create the gaps where we'll be able to come in through from the left and the right. Like so. The units are going to come towards each other, attack orders have been issued. I'm then going to pull my unit back instead though. The enemy still looking to come after me is going to follow me. Of course, do be aware of what unit is chasing you, how fast it is, if it's likely to catch you, and if it's worth the risk, because they are probably going to take a few hits in the back before you get yourself to line up. But here we are falling back a little bit. You can see the gap forming as we go. One big gap here. Plenty of room to get rat ogres through. There's another gap forming up on the other side. And then we can issue our attack order with that unit again so that they don't get charged in the back in this case. Our rat ogres are in place and they've now got a nice big gap to charge through to get their flank on. Although I'm not sure what this unit is doing, that is not the Phallus of Doom shape I asked for. Make sure your phallus is tidy before you breach, otherwise things may go terribly wrong. The other one's going to get through. There are some of my units in the way, but we should be able to push through them easy enough, so the flank should work just fine. This unit getting through a treat, even though it was a bit of a weird shape. But there you go. Flanking at its finest. And honestly, this tactic isn't really something you ever plan for. It's just when the opportunities appear, you see if you've got a good unit to make use of it, and then you go through, check who's on the other side, of course. Like I said, you don't want to run into something that's a terrible matchup. And then hey ho, you've got yourself some nice flanking. This can happen all throughout the battle though. These kind of opportunities may appear. It may look like you need to go all the way around the unit, but you can just probably sneak through gaps if you just put your units in a thinner formation. You can use this pulling back tactic if you need to try and create some gaps, but as I say, they very often appear of their own accord. And lastly, if you really want to be a cocky little shit, you could try pulling off the tactic this way, although it is somewhat impractical, but it's awesome when it works. So here I've got some trolls that I want to get through, these units of dwarves. I'm going to line them up ready to go, and then what I'm going to do to make the hole is use magic to knock these units over, removing their mass so that they're just basically not there anymore for a few seconds, allowing my trolls to be able to walk over them and to get straight through. So I'm going to drop this breath attack to knock these boys over, trying not to hit too much of my own unit with this. I'm going to issue my move order, hopefully timing it right. The breath spell is going to come off, knock these dwarves to the floor, meaning that they're kind of not there for a few seconds. We're able to move through them. Issue my order a few times. You'll probably have to because they'll keep getting up and slowing them down as you go. But you can see these trolls quite comfortably breezing through these dwarfs, able to get a flank on and sneak through, creating a door by putting a hole in the door, basically. So this is a nice tactic. If it can work, it is a rare one for the opportunity to arise so perfectly. But if you set up your units well and there's a unit there to knock down, it could work a treat. If you've got the right breath spell as well, it's finding the right angle and the right way to use the breath spell. Although it doesn't have to just be breath spells that you can do this with. Explosion spells can work in the same manner. Anything that knocks an enemy unit over so that they become kind of massless for a few seconds allows you to do this. Here we'll use Brain Burster, which is just a quick explosion spell. Get our trolls ready to move, knock all the enemies over, and then my trolls should be able to run straight through. There you go, just stomping on dwarf heads as they go. Just kicking them out the way because they're quite high mass. Really, monstrous infantry is the best thing to do this version of it with because everything else will probably just get stuck. And then when you're through, of course, you're free to go wherever the hell you want and destroy whatever the hell you need to. We still got some magic here. Let's try it with one more different spell. Maybe the Foot of Gork. Where can we put the Foot of Gork? Let's try and line this up a little better. We'll pull these trolls away. Try and get them behind this little bit of the line on our side. And then we'll see if we can charge through using the Foot of Gork. And wind spells will be good for this as well, I guess. The Burning Head or Wind of Death, they should knock things over. So if you can time it right, you'll be able to run over those units and just get some units behind them to flank the crap out of them. So let's try it with the Foot of Gork now. Can it work? Or will it just kill everything too much? Position it. We'll take out our own unit a little bit probably, but we'll get this flank. And that's all we're really trying to test. Comes the Foot of Gork. Get moving. It's maybe a little bit late on the attack order. The Foot of Gorks mostly destroy these two units anyway, but you can see they're running through no problem. Although there is not a lot of Dwarf left in either of those units. But the idea should still work the same as it worked with Brainburster and Edbutt as well, which is the wind spell or breath spell. So there you go. Numerous ways to execute the exploitation of gaps in the enemy's army. This can be a very powerful flanking tactic in any part of the game, early, mid, late, whatever. If there's a gap, you should be able to put a unit thin enough in the Phallus of Doom formation and get it through there to be able to flank around nice and easy. So there you go. I hope you've enjoyed this. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the future.